Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. Let's talk a few minutes this evening about the recent developments in the Mike Flynn case. Y'all have probably heard by now that the presiding judge, Sullivan, has appointed an outside attorney, a gentleman by the name of John Gleeson, to come in and, in a very real sense, represent the interests of we the people in the case of the United States versus Mike Flynn. Now, I've heard the Trump loyalists complaining and moaning about how Judge Sullivan doesn't have the authority to do that because, Mike Flynn and his defense attorneys want the case dismissed. Bill Barr and the U.S. Attorney for D.C., Tim Shea, who signed the dismissal motion, they want the case dismissed. So Judge Sullivan has no discretion. He has to just dismiss the case. Judge Sullivan disagrees. And here's why Judge Sullivan is right. The criminal justice system and the cases that are handled in the criminal justice system generally have two parties, right? The defendant and his or her attorneys, the defense team, and the prosecutors who represent the interests of the people in criminal cases. But judges have a role to play too. They're not just there to call balls and strikes. They're not just there to rule on objections. Objection sustained, objection overruled. They're there to ensure that both parties get a fair trial. They're there to ensure that the defense attorneys and the prosecutors are following the rules and are following the law. What Judge Sullivan did by appointing John Gleeson to come in as an outside attorney, in a sense as an outside prosecutor, was designed to ensure that fair process for both Mike Flynn, but importantly, for the people who were going largely unrepresented in the Mike Flynn case. Let's take a look at the order that Judge Sullivan issued appointing John Gleeson, and then let's talk a little bit about who John Gleeson is. First of all, the order reads, "It is ordered that the court exercises its inherent authority to appoint the Honorable John Gleeson as amicus curiae to present arguments in opposition to the government's motion to dismiss. It's further ordered that John Gleeson shall also address whether Flynn should be held in contempt for perjury." So Judge Sullivan has tasked Mr. Gleeson with two things. One, as amicus curiae, as friend of the court, he wants arguments from Mr. Gleeson about why the Mike Flynn guilty plea should not be dismissed. And then the second thing he wants to know is, should Mike Flynn be held in contempt for lying to the court when he swore he took an oath and he said, "Yeah, I did it. Yeah, I'm guilty." Now he's claiming he's not guilty. So was he lying to the court? And if so, should he be held in contempt? Who is John Gleeson? Well, John Gleeson is a longtime public servant. He was a federal prosecutor in New York, where he prosecuted, among other cases, mob cases, mafia cases, including the case against mob boss John Gotti. After leaving the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York, he was appointed as a federal district court judge in New York, where he served for more than 20 years. And now he will be assisting Judge Sullivan in the Mike Flynn case, and he will be representing we the people. Why do we need this representation? Why has Judge Sullivan taken this admittedly unusual step to appoint an outside attorney? Think about it this way. Let's assume that a mob boss was charged with crimes, pled guilty to those crimes, and then he got to the prosecutor. He bribed the prosecutor, gave the prosecutor $1 million to dismiss the case. The prosecutor accepted the money and moved to dismiss the case. And they waltzed into court, and both the defense attorney for the mob boss and the prosecutor were arguing to the judge the case ought to be dismissed. If the judge dismissed that case without getting to the bottom of why in the world a prosecutor would try to dismiss a case against a really consequential defendant who had pled guilty to the charge, then the judge, in a very real sense, would be facilitating and enabling that corrupt scheme between the defendant and the prosecutor. In the Mike Flynn case, Judge Sullivan, in substance but in a very real way, has announced by appointing John Gleeson, I am not going to be a party to whatever drug deal Mike Flynn and Bill Barr are cooking up. I, for one, am heartened and frankly thrilled that we, the people, will be represented in the Mike Flynn case. We'll be going up against Mike Flynn and Bill Barr, who are lockstep, in league, figuratively in bed together, trying to do this dirty drug deal. But now at least we have John Gleeson representing the interests of the people, and we have Judge Emmett Sullivan, who, I believe to my core, will do what's right and what's fair and what's just. He's done it before. He did it more than a decade ago in the Senator Ted Stevens case, when it turned out the government was involved in some ethical misconduct, not disclosing Brady information that would have been helpful to the defendant, Senator Ted Stevens. And Judge Sullivan appointed an outside prosecutor to get to the bottom of it. And he's done it again. Why? Because justice matters. It matters. Folks, as always, please stay safe. Please stay coronavirus free, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.